Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we are returning, taking a look at Shrine of the Storm plus 12. We're going to be taking a look at the dungeon, giving my detailed opinion on the topics, just like we've been covering in this video series. But also, we're also going to be talking about the affixes this week especially, and that is explosive and bolstering. And right out of the gate, you're going to see us handle some things in a certain way. We line of sighted most of the explosive orbs, and that's going to be a theme that you really want to try to continue in the dungeon. And we also CC'd a mob that was patrolling in that very first room. It's like a Templar mob. He's going to reduce the damage everything else takes. And that is a very difficult mob type. Now, we're going to actually get extremely lucky here with the Templar. He is going to be padding up here exactly when we want him to. And this is probably one of the most complicated mob types in here because it makes everything else take significantly less damage. That one specifically was infested, but also it's going to be, with bolstering, it's going to complicate things pretty severely. So, the overall theme of the way I play this dungeon and dungeons in general this last week was just to be as slow, as methodical as possible. Now, I know a lot of people, typically on fortified or on non-fortified weeks, that is, they want to pull bigger trash. They want to try to gain as much DPS on trash as possible. But I really would recommend against it with bolstering. I feel like bolstering potentially can really cause a lot of problems. But as you see there, we are trying to prevent both bolstering and infested from being a problem there. And the CC is still causing the orbs to spawn. So, yeah, we found this out in Legion. Pretty damning situation there. You really can't CC mobs. Had it happen a lot in Halls of Valor, one of the hardest trash dungeons in the game at the time. Halls of Valor teaming explosive week. There was basically tons of orbs, and we would try to CC them. You pretty much could not because the orbs would hit you, so what you had to do was try to line of sight them. So really those are the best tips I can give you for dealing with the potential damage that might come from explosives. CC is fine if you're already worried about infested or bolstering, but it's not really going to help with explosive in any way. So the best option is to simply try to line of sight them if possible. There are actually many different ways that you can do this, and it's going to vary from dungeon to dungeon. But here we go, make a grievous error, and it's not even a grievous week. This is a absurd error that we make, and frankly, yeah, it's going to be one of many. Let's put it this way. So with bolstering, we talked a lot about it the previous week that it was bolstering. So if you want to learn more about the specifically bolstering, feel free to check it out. But this week especially, you really want to avoid aggroing extra stuff like that. Now, typically yellows do not bolster bigs, but bigs will bolster yellows. Regardless, that didn't really happen there, but still, the yellows can still spawn I'm sorry, got myself in that mindset now. They can spawn an explosive, and that is obviously extremely bad. Having to deal with more than one explosive at a time can often be the cause of a wipe, depending on what kind of comp you have, what kind of group you have. But so typically, what would I recommend for explosive? I would say, I made the mistake of running with a full range team during the stream the other day. And I didn't think it would be any problem whatsoever, especially because we had Bombkin, which I think is one of the best specs in the game for dealing with explosives, especially in Legion it was, but I guess maybe it's just not anymore. I don't know. So really the answer is to just take a couple melee now. Really one or two depending on how confident you are as a tank. I feel the tank and the healer are the ones that are the best capable of dealing with explosive. And the reason I'm going to say that is because the more damage you do to the explosives, the more likely you are to waste DPS, the more likely you are to overkill them. And this can happen, of course, even when a tank and a healer attack them at the same time. You might both overkill them, but regardless, you'd be wasting theoretically at least less damage if, two damage dealers or two people who deal damage to them who aren't damage dealers than if two, a demon hunter and a rogue both turn to them and both try to one-shot them. So, those are things that you want to keep in mind. And the one big tip I can give as a Blood Death Knight, especially, and, even in future weeks, this will be relevant, is take the talent Blood Drinker. Now, Vein Render is extremely good, or whatever, I can never remember. Heartbreaker. Heartbreaker is the name of Vein Render. That's from Legion. But anyway, yeah, the talent that increases the runic power you gain when you heart strike. That's a really good talent for 5-mans, and this week especially, it maybe have been a very good talent. But I really like Blood Drinker, and I'm going to tell you why. Blood Drinker is basically a guaranteed kill on any explosive orb anywhere in 40 yards. So this happens all the time in 5-mans, and it's really an error. It shouldn't happen, but it does. An explosive orb will spawn somewhere far away, and we'll talk about why that might happen later in this video, but it might spawn far away from the group. and you might not, the group might not react to it in time, especially if you have multiple melee. This is always going to be a problem. If you have multiple melee, you might have one spawn really far away, and they might not be able to get to it in time, whereas you have an ability that will absolutely kill it no matter what. In fact, oftentimes, if the first tick crits, it might die just from that tick, depending on what difficulty level you're doing. Now, I'm fairly certain this is still the case. The higher difficulty, the more health these things have. We've already found it to be true for infested, so I'd have to imagine it is the same still for explosive. This is how I believe it worked in Legion, so I assume there's no difference there. But anyway, just, another big tip I can give, especially for bolstering, is just CC any infested mobs. And I guess, these hard CCs are going to be better than your other options, but you really just want to prevent any bolstering with infested. And if you don't CC infested and you pull, say there's 3 mobs, one of them's infested, well, then you're basically just putting yourself at a huge disadvantage when you actually have finished killing the infested. And on top of that, you might also fail to kill the infested. And this is something we've been talking about for a long time now. Had this famous battle in the comments section of the first video I ever made on Mythic Plus and Legion, talking about how you should always CC infested. And I still stand by that. I think the answer is always CC infested. There's no reason to take risks that you don't need to take in a timed 5-man dungeon. But other people will say that the risks are so easy to mitigate that it's not even worth, basically that you spend extra time killing the pack when you CC it. I don't necessarily agree, but I don't have any mathematical evidence to back it up. But the way I look at it is, if there's a pack of 4 and one of them is infested, you would blow all your CDs and you'd effectively only be dealing damage to 1 mob, right? Because you're going to pre-pot, you're going to use CDs on the pull. Realistically, you're not going to wait until halfway through the pack to use CDs. Maybe you will, I don't know. But for me, I pop everything on the pull every time that it's up, and that's how I do it. So I'm doing all this AoE damage to mobs that are healing, and then after we kill that 1 mob, we have to make sure we don't make an error. But, it's an easy error to solve, so regardless, maybe that's not the biggest deal. And then we have to kill the 3 mobs. Whereas if you CC'd, you'd have your pre-pot and all your CDs for 3 mobs, and then you could solo the 1 mob, right? Well, either way, with bolstering, that's way, way worse, because you're killing 1 mob, the other 3 are healing. Now the other 3 are stronger, so considerably more damage is needed to kill them, and that's just not the right way to do it. You definitely want to absolutely, I think, CC every time you can in infested with bolstering, and especially, when it's fortified weak, this would be even worse. But I don't know, regardless, the trash in here has given a lot of people fits, and the answer I can say, clearly, but obviously, but basic, is to just interrupt as often as you can. There's a lot of different mob types that do a lot of casts. In fact, somebody actually recommended that I made a video on every interruptible cast in every dungeon, and that's an interesting idea. Maybe someday we'll have time for that, but for now, the answer really is, and I made a joke about this on stream, but the answer really is to just interrupt everything. And I know it's not always possible, but with 5 people, with stuns, with knockbacks, with death grips, it should be pretty possible. There's going to be mobs where you can't rely on those things, the grips and all that, knockbacks to interrupt. But for about 75 to 80% of the trash in every dungeon, you're going to be able to knock them back. You're going to be able to stun them. You're going to be able to grip them. You'll be able to fear them, silence them, whatever else you can do as a group. And this is very important. So you just want to prevent that as much as possible. Now, right here's a great example. There's probably a better way to deal with it than the way we did, because this mob is now bolstered 3 times. What I was trying to have happen was I was basically trying to get this mob here out in front of the other mobs, so that they would die way away from this one, but it was just never going to happen, because they run, right? When they run, they go away from the mob. So I was hoping that, they would die and then start running, and they would be far enough away from this mob that it wouldn't get bolstered. But I'm pretty sure there's 4 total, and looks like 3 of them bolstered it. So regardless, what's happening here is the carved flesh mechanic. Hopefully everybody knows that mechanic. You stand in that rune to prevent it. But with 3 stacks of bolster, it's it's still killing people even with the rune. So here you go, another CC. We got 3 mobs, definitely 3 mobs minus the infested CC target. Definitely want to stun, definitely want to interrupt, definitely want to CC there. Now these big guys are going to emulate the boss coming up. Just an AoE ability that, that whirling slam there, it's going to, deal a decent amount of damage to you. I'm pretty sure maybe one of them applies Asunder armor. I don't really even know what it is. That's how little I care about Asunder armor as a blood DK. I have so little armor anyway, but regardless, that type of mob, you could stun it, you can grip it, you could knock it back to prevent it doing its cast. You know, the damage dealers in the group will probably want to do that anyway because they don't want to be getting hit by the cast either. So now this mob here, I pull over to the side. You can pull it anywhere you want, but just be aware of this ability, Shipbreaker Storm or whatever. This could be line of sighted, and it's not really a big deal right now, but I would definitely recommend line of sighting it in the future because yeah, that's a lot of damage that you might be taking. So it's kind of similar to Court of Stars mechanic. It's a little bit different because that was like a big burst of damage, but this is a little bit less damage. But you know, maybe on a raging or you know, just fortified in general, somehow it gets bolstered. You're going to want to be prepared for that. Let's put it this way. Now here, mistakes are going to be made, and you really want to not make them. Let me put it that way. You really want to avoid aggroing extra mobs here, especially with bolstering, especially with explosive. I'm recommending, you know, CC there, and that's good. We do that, and then pull them back. Another thing about CCing bolstering, though, is you got to pull them back far enough, because if you don't, they will still bolster. I believe we've had this discussion on stream a lot. I don't know if it's 30. I don't know if it's 40 yards. Just figure out what is easy for you. But regardless, you want to be way safe and not sorry, because you don't really know. It's hard to measure exactly how many yards, 30 or 40, whatever it is, yards are, right? I think that's pretty safe to say that. So instead of risking it, just pull it back as far as you possibly can, even if it takes a little extra time. Now, here we go. Here's the mistake, right? Look at all of these explosive orbs. These little mobs here, just absolute fodder that really couldn't challenge us whatsoever, but they do bolster. You see many, many, many stacks of bolster, even though they're running. So they would potentially bolster those mobs. If those aggroed while we pulled, that would have been absolutely disastrous. These mobs, elites with like 5 to 10 stacks of bolster, would have absolutely been a nightmare. Probably would have killed us as well. So I just tried to avoid that. But otherwise, these small mobs, you know, you can pull on mass if you want. Bolstering is never really going to be a problem. But obviously, the explosive orbs are, so you got to be ready to kill them. Now, another tip that people might give with bolstering especially is you want to try to kill everything evenly. So even if it does bolster at the last second, it has very little health, and it just dies before any problems arise. And I would definitely recommend that too, but it's not always easy to do, especially when the mobs start with different health pools, start as different types of mobs, might be casters, might not be able to be gripped, might not be able to be corralled, whatever the situation is. But here we go, the second boss in here, arguably one of the hardest bosses in the game. There's a couple difficult bosses in here, but this one always kind of gives me fits. I'm still not 100% sure how this works, but from what I've seen, there's some kind of interaction with interrupting her cast and spawning a tornado. So apparently when you interrupt the cast, you could spawn a tornado. And I'm wondering if it's that purgeable buff on her now that has something to do with that. I still don't exactly know, so I'm sure you guys will let me know in the description. But just be aware that you can apparently spawn tornadoes by interrupting, even though interrupting seems like the right thing to do. These tornadoes can definitely complicate the encounter, but you know, realistically, you can just move from them. The other thing that you're, you know, supposed to do anyway, quote unquote, is to kite the big boss. I'm at a point now, you know, even on 12 Tyrannical, I don't really feel like I need to kite him that often. I'm doing it, but I probably would have been all right if there wasn't so many tornadoes around. I kind of got spooked, to be honest, because I keep getting hit by these tornadoes and knocked almost off the ledge, or what feels like out of the arena. But I thought they would reset. Luckily, I don't get far enough off. So, otherwise, the it's like a grayish greenish circle that the main dude, this dude here, puts down. You could stand in that to take a big reduction of damage. You could actually kind of face him to the side, have everybody on one side of it, you to the other, to take even less damage while fighting him. It's a little different if you're going to use both of them, try to do both of them in it, but realistically, you should be able to kill the caster in such a way that she'll die extremely fast, and then this guy is just a pushover after that. Really, he does a good amount of damage, but it's never going to be challenging when it's just him. The other cool thing about that tealish circle is that it can remove any debuff. From what I've seen, it does remove things like necrotic, but I don't think there's going to be anything that you need to worry about removing in you know, this week's affixes. So here's probably one of the most complicated mob types in the game. People say they want to use Discord for this dungeon. It's probably going to be for this and the last boss too, of course. You really want to have an interrupt rotation. You do not want to let a single one of these get off, especially with bolstering. It's going to absolutely devastate your group, and every time it goes off, you take more damage from it. I think it actually increases the casting speed of it too, but regardless, fully grippable. I don't think it can be stunned though, But you can grip, and there you go. You see just an absolute clutch play from both the Demon Hunter and the regular Hunter there. CCing that mob, because if that mob wandered into us with Infested, oh, yeah, that would have caused a lot of problems, and we definitely probably would have had some wipes coming up because of that. So regardless, you know, just like you're saying, just pull as small as possible, and you know, if that any patrols come into play, just CC them. That mob is actually part of this pack. It patrols in and out of it. A lot of times you'll fight this pack with that mob, so clearly with Infested, you want to try to swerve that from happening. But still, even with bolstering, you just got to really focus. Watch, as you see, look at that, guys. Oh my god, as you see, I have 2 stacks of this bolt, and oh my god, it's doing so much damage, and I cannot fail. I fail to finish it. Typically, that would be something that I would like to see finished, but I cannot. Now, here's an interesting thing. After we wipe, we all have to run back. This mob is in range of us when we run by, so we actually pull it. And you're going to see some count problems that are going to come up later in the dungeon. We'll talk about it when we go. But yeah, if we didn't pull that, I don't know. We're in a weird place count-wise. We actually pulled this mob when we didn't intend to. We didn't pull any of these yellow mobs. I probably should have talked to that as well. But you definitely want to try to avoid pulling those yellow mobs, especially with explosive. We kind of talked about it here. But as we go by here, there's a pack to the left that if you go all the way back to the start of the video, you'll see I have pulled as well. I think it's 100 pulled it. I don't know if he did it on purpose, but regardless, think about that when we have count, right? We did not, at least seemingly, mean to pull those things. It wasn't intentional, but we did pull them, and that was a part, like, you know, that was part of our count trajectory, at least. So I'm going to show you guys what we do skip-wise, and I'm going to show you guys what problems we come to see when we skip. But really, we haven't even started this video yet. Everything I'm talking about now is just leading up to a much graver picture that you're going to see in the last 15-20 minutes maybe of this video. For now, everything's going pretty well, and you know, everything looks good. But yeah, the last part of this video, you're going to have a lot to talk about. Let's put it that way. But anyway, yeah, you know, these mobs here, they do this, whatever, it's like a blue mechanic that you could dodge. If you pull 2 of them, which is very common when it's not infested or bolstering, you're going to have a lot to dodge. So just be aware that does a lot of damage, does a lot of frost damage. But, yeah, I don't know. Realistically, it's not that hard to dodge. Now, this is something that I've always been doing, but I definitely want to do with bolstering and explosive. I don't know if the things they spawn will spawn explosive, but I don't even want to take the risk. So you pull them out of this room, and then you could line of sight the tentacles. They won't be able to hit you through the wall. The other thing I've seen work, I don't know if it's intentional or been fixed or something like that. I haven't done it in a while, but you could actually pull them out so quick that even those things that spawn, they won't actually be in combat with you. So they won't even do anything. You just run back in here later and kill them. But regardless, yeah, that's the play. I don't know if they can bolster. I don't know if they can become spawning explosives. I wouldn't even risk it, right? Just take them out of the room. Make sure you line of sight them. Even if explosives spawn, then nothing is a problem there. So okay, so here is where things start to get interesting. So we CC that and skip 3 packs there. Now, this is a lot to skip, and ultimately you're going to see that it backfires on us. We are not going to have count here. That is on top of aggroing basically 3 packs that we normally would not have aggroed. Another pack that we talked about this just a few minutes ago, but another pack that I normally wouldn't aggro is right after the first boss. There's that Gale Caller, and surrounded by whatever, like initiates. To that mob pack's left is 2 mobs. Typically, I would skip that by just hugging the right, but I knew since we had a rogue, we should probably get some extra percentage. So as somebody in the chat just said there, 16% from last mob, from the last room. I completely didn't see that. I'm glad I saw it in post because, yeah, that's interesting. So you need at least, I guess, 84% going into that last room. We don't have it, and that is, of course, not on teaming. Things will be even worse on teaming. So, but if you are going to skip what we skip, you need to make sure you pull both sides of those tentacles. That will give you a little bit more count. But yeah, I guess you need 16% going into this last room. There's 3 or 4 packs of eels. I can't remember which, and then there are the mobs that are the precursors or the boss mechanics. So. Here we see something that, maybe you guys can learn from. The purple orbs can be soaked by a player, but realistically they're supposed to be soaked by the purple person who gets mind controlled. But they're going to chase you the whole time. So here you see it. It's kind of just chasing the entire time. So I'm just going to go ahead and clear it with Icebound or AMS. Either will work. As long as AMS holds, you will not be stunned, and it'll obviously absorb the magic damage. Typically when I do this, a second orb with AMS up usually does not hold. The second orb will deal damage to me and thus stun me as well. Even though AMS is up, it will be not enough. That Void Cassidy does is actually extremely dangerous too. You want to make sure you're interrupting as often as possible and having your group contribute as well. But otherwise, you can take a ton of them with Icebound. Since it's just a stun, you just run through all of them with Icebound and remove them, even though you'll take damage. You're a Blood Death Knight, so just Death Strike and no problems. But as you're going to see here, this is where things can arise. So it's difficult to say exactly when and where it's going to happen, but pretty commonly you're going to have too few up, or perhaps one gets soaked by accident, and then when the person gets mind controlled, they'll have too few. So it actually happened twice on this encounter. The person needed extra damage. If the cast that they have on their head completes, it will mind control them. That's how you know. So realistically, they need to be damaged out. Now, you could theoretically not even do damage. They could not even soak a single orb and just be killed by your damage, but obviously that's not a good idea. So you don't want to do that, but regardless, just be aware. If you notice that they have soaked all the orbs and they're still running around as a mind control, getting the cast potentially off, then you want to go and deal some damage to them. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until the next orb spawns, which can be done. Now, here we go. This is where things start to get interesting. So, mistake number 1. For some reason, when anything spawns on these mobs, including Sanguine, but especially Explosive, the orbs will just sink all the way to the bottom. They'll be at the very, very, very bottom. So we make that mistake pretty severely, and we wipe to it. Causes a lot of discord in the group. I don't really know what to say other than you either got to be ready to kill them at range or you got to move them onto land. I think the answer is move them onto land, but this mob type here is very dangerous. Stacks up a big magic taken thing. And it's like a magic dot that stacks up. So you definitely want to use AMS for that. It will prevent the application of it as well. I think it kind of just works like necrotic, where every time they melee you or perhaps use some kind of spell on you, it'll apply it. So just want to avoid it with AMS. But anyway, you see some arguments happening there. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I didn't know that was going to happen regardless, but the group was not ready for it. So that will cause some problems. But anyway, yeah, for this, you definitely, anytime you're going to fight, this is going to be true for anything in water from what I can tell, but there's not a lot in water outside of these mobs in this dungeon especially, but in most dungeons. So just pull them onto land and then you'll be able to kill them just like any other explosives, but still a very dangerous couple packs, and especially with Infested, it can be quite difficult because you're not going to really be able to CC these. I don't know what mob type they are, but they're definitely not going to be like, I don't know, maybe they're beasts, maybe they're apparitions. I don't really know, but it's going to be harder to CC them typically. Let's put it that way. So you're going to see another funny little thing happen here in a bit too, but regardless, I grip them on the land, and so you can line of sight. Those ones are in the water, but because we're on land, we're technically out of line of sight of them regardless, so you don't even have to worry about it. But spawn a Gahoon, whatever, we kill them, and you know, the thing that I always worry about is when there's explosives and spawns, what's the group's output going to be? Are they going to attack the explosives, or are they going to attack the Gahoons? So I finally came to the realization that more than likely they're going to attack the spawns, which I think is the right choice, because if the spawns infest another mob, we might have a lot of trouble, but at least if an orb goes off, we can heal through it. So what I always do is I always just try to attack the explosive. So there you go. I don't know, man. Sometimes I get frustrated by people in pugs, and more often than not, it comes from a certain couple realms. I'm not going to name those realms just to not sound like a racist or whatever, but it's more common than not. Let's put it that way. So this hunter, who apparently wants to tank, just decided that yeah, he's gonna pull for me. So he aggroed one pack, I aggroed another pack, and that's obviously a wipe. It's frustrating because that's something that I don't know how do you deal with. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just let me pull. I don't know. Like, that's why I bring it up in chat. But it's like, just let me do the done. I'm the tank. You know what I mean? You don't need to worry about this. This is my job. I'll handle this. And maybe it's a little bit of a control freak in me, but realistically, you don't need to do this. This is what I'm here for, to pull, to dictate the pace. So, I don't know. Now, that's an academic point. It's not really relevant to the dungeon or the comp or whatever else, but you're going to have that in 5 minutes, especially if you're tanking, especially if you're pugging. There's going to be people who, for some reason, they're not playing a tank, but they want to play a tank. And, like, even just right there, that guy, again, aggro's for me, but, you know, whatever. We now agreed, kill this pack, whatever. Watch this. This is funny, too. That's a heal. Oh my god. I honestly, this is like tilting at this point. Just watching this back. That mob was at like 6% health, and it didn't get interrupted. Now, I didn't interrupt it either, so I'm to blame partially, but it's just kind of funny to see that. It's like, yeah, that mob was at like 6% health, and it just healed the full. So obviously, hopefully everybody knows this mechanic by now. This trash is going to teach you the fight. Effectively, there's going to be one of those big Shaw-looking ads, and two of those, whatever, face sucker-looking ads, mindbender type ads. You know, the DPS are going to go to one phase, and the other, you know, whatever, the melee, or I mean the tank and the healer are going to go to the other phase. Typically, the healer would use a big buff that they get on the fight to substantially increase the DPS they can do and potentially kill that ad alone. There's not really a lot of unavoidable damage on the encounter, and that's kind of trumped by the fact that, you know, you get this mechanic that takes you to very, very, very low health. But again, as long as you do the fight right, you're never going to actually take any damage. So, you know, there's these tentacles that spawn that might slap the ground. There's these, whatever, these ads that might track the boss. You want to prevent them from hitting them. These are all going to do a big burst of AoE magic damage, but realistically, if you just stop that, then you don't ever worry about it, and the healer could sit at low HP. That is not going to happen in this dungeon. You're going to see a lot of mistakes here, okay? So we are obviously not upgrading this key regardless. We're not even going to finish it, but this is how important I want to show this off. I show you a dungeon that we don't even finish. We get to the very end, but regardless, what I'd recommend, you know, just whatever is happening, no matter week to week, just save your CDs for this first ad. The quicker you can get this first ad done, the better it'll be. The damage dealers are probably going to front load their damage as well, and they might not kill theirs quicker, might not have the interrupts, so the quicker you and the healer can get out, the better. But as you see, healer is extremely low health thanks to this, whatever this mechanic is. I'm not exactly sure how it works, and we're not dealing with the fight right. We're letting interrupts go off, we're making mistakes, and he's taking damage, so he dies, and you're going to see this happen. I think he must die like 4+ times to that mechanic. He lets it stay on him. It's a dispellable mechanic, I'm pretty sure, by the way. And you know, you only really need to use it if you're like maximizing this fight properly. But there is the first explosive orb spawn, and you're going to see why that is a problem very shortly. So these ads spawn, and they spawn explosives. Now, the reason that this is interesting is because typically you don't want to kill those ads. Typically, you would ignore them, okay? And you're going to even see people constantly say we should be ignoring them in the chat. But they're just constantly spawning explosives. The explosives are in the big purple puddles. And we're just done. I don't know what to say. Now, this was recorded on Tuesday, okay? Also, if you watch the stream from this session, this was Tuesday's session, I also had a similar problem with Underrot. Last boss of Underrot was even harder because those little gray blobs that spawn on the fight that are basically a mechanic, not an ad, they spawn explosives too. Now, apparently they fixed it. I've yet to do Underrot a second time this week. I won't end up doing it this week, so I don't know if they did. There's a hot fix, okay? And I think on the list was King's Rest, because similar situations with some bosses, especially the first one, Underrot, and Tol Dagor. I think Tol Dagor was the other one, because the first boss spawns a bunch of orbs as well. So anyway, here we didn't have count. So people are like, let's just get count now, and then we'll go one-shot this boss slow. This will be easy. We'll finish this up. But we just CC the pack, so it's like, what are we doing here? I don't know. So if we had the wherewithal to have count, you know, I didn't know. I don't know the count. That's the thing. And, you know, people are critical of that when I do. You know, I don't really, I'm not sure. I'm not a big fan of the Mythic Dungeon tool thing, whatever. It's a great add-on, and it's good, but I'm not going to sit there and plan out every single route that could possibly happen. And the reason that we don't have count is because we pulled extra early, and I was like, all right, we're good to skip. So typically we would pull, so we skipped 3 packs, right? Typically we would pull one of those 3, and then we'd have perfect count, almost perfect count. But we skipped all 3. And you know, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, we pulled so many extra mobs, it's fine. That's fine. We got plenty of extra count, but we still did not have count. We needed 1 extra mob. I think we had like 99%, so that's a problem. But anyway, let's focus on this. So again, the explosive hot fix came in on Tuesday evening. I don't know if it targeted Shrine. I'm pretty sure Shrine was not on that list. And I guess it's not surprising, because this is actually a mechanic that they probably want you to deal with a different way. It's just another one of those cases where it's like the way everybody deals with this mechanic is to simply ignore it. But realistically, I'd imagine what you're supposed to do is kind of, so when they die, they do a burst of damage. And this is what I was talking about before. These small ads, things like 5, maybe 5 to 8 mobs. I don't know. It's like 6-ish, it seems like, mobs spawn. And when they die or reach the boss, they explode. So typically what we would do other weeks is just slow them, kite boss, prevent them from hitting the boss. If they hit him when you're in this phase, they don't do anything. You don't take any damage from them. They just die, okay? So that's what you would want. You'd want to do, again, the healer dies. Exact same mistake. Every time he's going to die the exact same mistake. But anyway, yeah, you just want to let them kind of, prevent them from getting there. And once they eventually do, you'll be downstairs, and that'll be that. In the past, before people realize this, we just killed them. Straight up killed them, and it does a lot of DPS to the group, and you're probably not going to survive it. But this week, it's like, what the hell do we do? It looks like there's only 5. I don't know, 5 or 6. Yeah, I guess there's 5. But regardless, they're going to constantly spawn the explosives. And, they potentially might be in the shadow stuff, which silences you, does a ton of damage. And I'm just playing very poorly because of it, trying to help them kill the orbs. It's not really happening. We kill some of the ads. We kill all the ads, actually. Taking a ton of damage. Healer's struggling to keep us up. We're not lusting. I just don't really know. So really, this is the point where I tell you, like, I think, explosive is overtuned, but I mean, it's really not. The answer is to just kill them, but it's so hard to kill them. I just don't know what to do. Again, healer dies, literally the same mistake. 3 deaths now to the exact same mistake. Just dispel it. You don't need to do that much. Oh man, I don't know. So we use like 7 battle reses on this guy throughout the course of like the 4 or 5 pulls we have on this, and we never get anywhere, but the problem I'm going to have with this boss is there's just not going to be anywhere to tank him. I don't know what to do. I'm not really sure. And this is going to be, I think it's probably going to be our best pull as well. So now they're all over the place. So I'm like, all right, we're going to have to try to kill one, try to grip it. No, it hits the boss. It's fine. Doesn't really matter. I don't think it changes. If we kill it or it hits the boss, I don't think there's a difference. I'm not 100% sure on that because literally this is the first time I've ever really killed them. But as you see, the damage is insurmountable. And we battle res again because we think, oh, maybe we can kill it. We bloodlusted, but we are not going to. Pretty much anytime a damage healer dies on this fight, it's GG, though, because you're not going to have enough interrupts. Unless you have 3 melee. The problem is when you have, Demon Hunter and Rogue, they can get every interrupt, and that's fine. Because, like, the pacing of the interrupts are such that their CDs will be up every time for it. It's such a long interrupt. But, Hunter could help as well. You really want to have at least one range trying to get the other ad because that's still doing its stuff. I think it does AoE damage. I'm pretty sure that's what's killing the druid is AoE damage from the other ad getting its cast off. But I'm not 100% sure on that. But regardless, that's, part of what you want to do. And then furthermore, you want to make sure you have enough interrupts for all of this stuff. And if you bring like a mage, a warlock, and a hunter, well, you're done. What are you going to do? Especially so often warlocks don't seem to have interrupts. And I don't know, maybe now they're taking it more, but early on in the BFA, beta especially, but also on live, you bring a warlock, they don't have an interrupt. So, even if you have a resto shaman, they can't interrupt down there because they're in my phase. So you're basically just relying on what you got. And if you don't have good communication, that fight's impossible. Like, actually impossible. If you don't interrupt those casts, you cannot kill that mob. I don't think you'll ever kill that mob. Maybe some lower keys or really high gear, I don't know, but maybe it's possible to kill that mob without interrupting it once, but I don't think it is. I don't know. So we're going to try it a couple more times, but you're going to see more of the same, and I just want to leave all of this in here for full disclosure that we spent a long time on this boss, as you can see by the timer. At least 15-20 minutes on this boss, and we don't really get anywhere. We're not able to kill the boss, and I don't really know what the answer is. So this is, explosive right here. And like I said, they nerfed Underrot, similar situation with Underrot. I'm assuming King's Rest is probably the same when you kite those ads. And it's not really any different here. But I guess, Blizzard's, perspective is like, no. You're supposed to kill those ads. We're not going to let you get away with kiting them every week. So, Tokes it's his key, the Muffin Stump, that's the rogue in the group, it's his key. His idea was like, oh, we should have brought an extra ranged. We should have brought 2 ranged. So then they could have just killed the orbs, and we could have continued to just kite the ads. Maybe, maybe that's the case. And the real reason that that's a problem is because the orbs are going to be spawning in this yawning gate mechanic, which silences you, does damage, etc. So it's like, all right, that's true. If that's the case, then yeah, maybe a second range would have helped. I don't know. Didn't try it a second time. Didn't have any ranged. We had a hunter who, as I described, it wasn't the brightest. Wasn't the smartest guy, let's put it that way. And we have basically a healer who just keeps suiciding. I don't even know what to say. I mean, look at this. Exact. I mean, come on, dude. Come on. What are you talking about? That's is that the 4th or the 5th time he's died now to the exact same mechanic? The exact same way. What do you say about that? I don't know. Hard enough when you have that going on, man. But I don't know. Yeah, so like I said, pretty much anything. I don't know what you guys think about explosive. I'd love to hear your comments. Now, last week when I made the video on Grievous, I said that I thought that might be one of the hardest combinations, one of the hardest affixes in the game, especially combined with whatever it's called. Clutch grip there, by the way, but it doesn't matter because we're killing them anyway. You know, Grievous plus Sanguine was a real problem, especially with Infest. Caused a lot of problems. And, you know, when there's a new seasonal affix, maybe things will change again. And that's quite a big part of why I like Mythic Plus right now. The seasonal affix adds a lot to the diversity and difficulty of the dungeons. But it's like, what are you supposed to do here? You know what I mean? Like, people are, you know, last week, the reason I brought it up was because last week somebody was like, dude, you think this week was hard, being Grievous, etc. You think this week was hard? Next week is going to be impossible. And, you know, I've done a lot of 5-mans this week, and I could easily say this is my favorite affix set. Without any question, this is my favorite affix set. And the answer to why that is because I love explosives. I love dealing with explosives as a tank. It's really fun. But here you see I'm making it just a terrible error. I don't know. I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to be. And it's just, I can't figure it out. But anyway, I love explosives as a tank because Blood DK especially has some really, really, really good synergy with them. Like I said, Blood Drinker is a guaranteed kill. Always, right? And Death Strike, pretty much guaranteed kill if you hit them with Death Strike. You know, Heart Strike isn't going to cleave off them. I'm pretty sure AoEs will not work on them or off them, but you can still hit them with that and do some damage. And then, of course, now melee attacks do so much more, so that's nice. And even more so, you know, Marrow Rend is one of our hardest hitting globals, even though it uses 2 runes. It's still pretty nice. So, like, you have a lot of easy ways to deal with this affix. And that's good. You know what I mean? I think that's really fun. I really like that. So I don't know. I think we try it one more time, but you know, you're just going to see more of the same here. So that's pretty much everything I got to say. I really like this affix set, but you know, it's really difficult. It's actually a lot harder than it might look. And it's going to add a lot of time. This week is definitely going to add a ton of time to keys because you're going to have to constantly switch off. You're going to lose a lot of DPS doing that. And then you're going to have a lot more problems bolstering as well, right? So, like, basically, these affixes just add a ton of time to your kills. And it's going to be really hard to upgrade keys. Again, another week where we had, like, less than 5 deaths in, like, 11s. And we don't upgrade the key. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think of these affixes. But that's pretty much everything. It's a very, very odd week in some dungeons. So let me know if this has been changed or nerfed or whatever else. But Shrine of the Storm, boys, there it is. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.